In April 2025, a 145% tariff on Chinese imports brought America's busiest ports to a virtual standstill. Over $14 billion worth of cargo vanished from the supply chain, leaving shipping docks eerily quiet and store shelves increasingly bare. At the Port of Los Angeles, once a hive of global trade, the atmosphere is ghostly. Retailers across the country are scrambling to stretch dwindling inventories, while behind the scenes, anxiety is mounting. This isn't just about shipping delays, it's the onset of a full-blown supply chain crisis. Let's break down the critical developments of this economic standoff and what it means for everyday Americans. Chaos has gripped the waterfront. The Port of Los Angeles, a cornerstone of Pacific trade, is in distress. Cargo volume is projected to plummet by 35% compared to last year. Gene Soroka, the port's executive director, put it bluntly. This isn't a slowdown, it's a full stop. Major shipping lines like Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd are scaling back operations, canceling sailings or rerouting vessels entirely. In April alone, more than 80 sailings to West Coast ports were scrapped, with even more cancellations expected in May. At China's export hubs, containers are piling up like abandoned cars. Some ships are bypassing U.S. ports entirely. Others drift offshore, waiting for orders that never come. Unlike the pandemic-era delays driven by health protocols, this freeze is entirely policy-driven, and it's reverberating across the logistics chain. Cranes that once moved mountains of goods now sit idle. Customs agents, dock workers, and trucking companies are feeling the hit, with many seeing reduced hours or temporary layoffs. Even ports on the Gulf and East Coasts aren't immune to the ripple effects. Join us as we explore what's next for America's supply chain and how this crisis could soon hit your wallet. Despite some diversification in sourcing, U.S. ports are still grappling with the ripple effects of rerouted cargo, delayed customs clearances, and lighter shipments overall. The Northwest Seaport Alliance reports that incoming freight is down by as much as 30%, and some exporters are scrambling to recover containers tied to canceled orders. With half of the Port of Los Angeles' traffic historically tied to China, the disruption hitting now isn't a ripple, it's a tidal wave. What's backing up at the ports is already vanishing from store shelves. Retailers are feeling the pressure. As steep tariffs choke off imports from China, supply chain chaos is growing, especially for major players like Walmart and Target, who rely heavily on Chinese manufacturing. The National Retail Federation expects import cargo volume to drop 20% in the second half of 2025. With shipments stalled, inventory is vanishing fast. Gene Soroka, executive director of the Port of Los Angeles, says most large retailers only have 5 to 7 weeks of stock left. Shoppers might not see empty shelves just yet, but they're already noticing fewer choices, and price hikes could be next. Small businesses are bearing the brunt. Jay Foreman, CEO of toy company Basic Fun, warns that missing seasonal shipments, especially ahead of the holidays, can turn once valuable inventory into instant losses. Inventory planning has become a high-stakes game. Companies are racing to diversify sourcing, but finding and switching suppliers mid-season is both slow and costly. While large retailers might have the resources to weather the storm, smaller ones are being squeezed between rising costs and shrinking profit margins. Across the board, shoppers are seeing fewer options in categories like clothing, home goods, and electronics. Prices remain relatively stable for now, but if the trade standoff drags on, that won't last. This trade war is forcing a rewrite of the retail playbook. And with Q3 on the horizon, many businesses are bracing for a turbulent ride. Quick pause. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, hit that subscribe button for more real-time updates on supply chain chaos, trade disputes, and what it all means for the economy. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The broader economic fallout. The $14 billion shortfall in cargo and the sharp tariffs on Chinese goods are hitting the U.S. economy where it hurts. In Q1 2025, GDP shrank by 0.3%, the first contraction since 2020, signaling a slowdown in the post-pandemic recovery. Transportation is taking a major hit. West Coast ports are jammed or idling. Trucking routes are going quiet. Rail freight volumes are dropping fast. Logistics firms are slashing hours, downsizing fleets, and furloughing workers. If container traffic doesn't rebound soon, Layoffs could spread from ports to warehouses and retail distribution hubs. Manufacturers, especially in the auto industry, are feeling the squeeze too. The cost of critical components like semiconductors, electronics, and interior parts is rising. Those costs are starting to filter into consumer prices, pushing up inflation in durable goods. The uncertainty around tariffs is freezing decision-making. Companies are hitting pause on expansions, holding off on hiring, and pulling back on investments. The post-COVID wave of business confidence is starting to fade, replaced by caution and concern as inflation, stalled trade, and shrinking demand take center stage. The U.S. economy is on shaky ground. Even if tariffs were rolled back today, recovery would take time, possibly months. Right now, the economic engine is sputtering, and there's no quick fix. In response, companies are being forced to rethink their supply chains. Can anyone realistically replace China? With Chinese shipments slowing to a crawl, U.S. firms are scrambling to diversify. Southeast Asia, particularly Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia, is emerging as the go-to alternative. But scaling up to China's manufacturing capacity and logistical efficiency isn't easy or fast. Vietnam's factories are overwhelmed, ports are congested, and labor forces are stretched to the limit. In Thailand, rising demand is straining production quality. These countries simply don't have the efficiency or scale that China developed over decades. Shifting supply chains isn't fast, and it's certainly not cheap. Finding new vendors, securing regulatory compliance, and organizing international freight logistics can take anywhere from 1 to 2 years. In the meantime, companies are dealing with higher costs, customs delays, and shipping backlogs caused by limited cargo capacity. Some tech and auto manufacturers are exploring reshoring production back to the U.S., but that comes with its own challenges. High labor costs and regulatory hurdles mean reshoring only makes sense for high-margin products or highly automated operations. For companies that depend on just-in-time logistics, even minor delays can bring entire production lines to a halt. While diversifying supply chains does build long-term resilience, it often comes at the cost of speed and efficiency. The shift away from China is underway, but it's a slow, bumpy process. Behind the scenes, companies are navigating a landscape filled with uncertainty, and the future of global trade remains anything but clear. The U.S.-China trade relationship is stuck in neutral. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has called the current tariff structure unsustainable, but no resolution appears on the horizon. Beijing, meanwhile, is staying quiet, likely waiting for political or corporate pressure in the U.S. to force movement. This ongoing stalemate is driving what economists now call structural volatility. Retailers can't plan with confidence, and manufacturers are stuck managing two costly strategies at once. One for a world where tariffs persist, and another in case they're rolled back. Capital investments are being delayed. R&D budgets are shifting toward stockpiling inventory and building risk buffers. Consumers are already feeling the squeeze. Product variety is shrinking. Seasonal releases are fewer, and prices are climbing, especially in categories like electronics, apparel, and furniture.
Labor is taking a hit too. Warehouse shifts are shrinking. Hiring freezes are spreading. And if the disruption drags on, widespread job cuts could follow. Meanwhile, America's global partners are watching closely. If U.S. trade policy starts to look erratic or unpredictable, some may shift their focus toward the EU or Asia-Pacific alliances, potentially reshaping global supply chains for good. If diplomacy continues to stall, the U.S. risks being sidelined in a system it once helped build. So what's the takeaway from all this? The $14 billion cargo freeze wasn't just a hiccup, it was a seismic shock. A disruption that's rippling through America's ports, retail shelves, and corporate boardrooms. Idle cranes, missing shipments, and mounting uncertainty have revealed the point where trade policy crashes into production realities. Manufacturers are scrambling to adapt. Retailers are bracing for shortages. And supply chains are starting to move, however slowly, beyond China. One thing is clear. Global trade is undergoing a massive transformation. The decisions being made right now by business leaders and policymakers won't just impact the next quarter. They'll shape the next decade of global commerce and competition. Now we want to hear from you. Should the U.S. double down on tariffs or push for renewed talks with China? Can Southeast Asia truly step up and replace China in global manufacturing? Is reshoring production to the U.S. a bold solution or just a costly dream?
Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from gearheads, strategists, and weekend wrenchers alike. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on supply chains, trade wars, and the future of global industry. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.